Today I'd like to talk to you about coming out of Egypt. You know, the lives we live and transitioning from where we are to where we want to be is so much like the story in the Bible where the Israelites, they were under hard bondage. They were beaten and they were whipped and they were producing and building for Pharaoh and living in meager houses and just surviving. And this is where most of us find ourselves in America and in most of the world today. Even though we're not necessarily being beaten with the whip, we actually are our own Pharaoh. We're beating ourselves with the whip to show up to a job to produce for them, where the ultimate benefit of our labor goes into producing their kingdom and not ours, not our lifestyle. Instead, it's wasted. And those taskmasters don't have to be there because our society has trained us to limit ourselves by believing there's only one way to do things, and that you have to have special permissions and you have to have special skills, spending years learning how to do something before you can even get permission to do something. So as the Israelites moved out of Egypt, they constantly grumbled and complained. Oh, back in the land of Goshen, the green, abundant land of Goshen, we had leeks and we had onions and we had all these wonderful stir-fried dinners, you know. We always knew our next meal was coming from. Is it not like that with us? If we're not working a job, we often like, well, where's the food going to come from? How am I going to know where my next meal is going to come from? Where's the security of knowing that I'm going to have the money to have the job, to have a place to live? You see, they were doing the same thing in the desert. It appeared at any given point that they didn't know for a fact there wasn't something that they could do to produce the next meal. And so they constantly turned back to their slave mentality. Well, it would be better to be a slave than to not know, right? Well, of course, you can have a knowing, and that knowing needs to come from a connection to your higher self from within. But even as they crossed and learned and consistently had what they needed, and this is what it's like when you set yourself free, you don't always know where the next provision's coming from, but yet it's always there. And even when they came right up to the promised land of stepping into living that perfect life they wanted, they turned away. And yet all they had to do is put their foot down, and the waters of turmoil and trouble and the masses would part, and they would cross over without being touched by the waters of trouble and turmoil. They would have stepped through to the other side, and having overcome all the obstacles and all the giants, they would possess their dreams. But yet, like the Israelites, many of us will not take our dreams. We will not choose to be the masters of our own life because we're afraid. We're afraid of not knowing where the next meal comes from. We're afraid of the giant, the obstacle that seems impossible. And yet, every time, these great fears we have, when we get on the other side of them, were nothing near as bad as we had imagined them to be. So, we have to learn to look not to external authority. Stop looking to Egypt. Stop looking to Pharaoh and all the programming. And we can't listen to the people, even the family members we love around us, because they have also been programming. You can't listen to your parents because they've been programmed, and all they're doing is regurgitating the program. We all know somewhere in the back of our mind or the pit of our stomach that there's something wrong with this and that it's not what it was promised to be. So there is a better way. If we regain our innocence, we return to our inner sense. We turn to our higher self, we turn to God, the Spirit within. And we have, in order to do that, you have to reduce the clutter and the noise and the clamor and the programming. So I'm going to issue you a challenge. Turn off the news, turn off the TV, stop watching movies for 90 days, 3 months. It'll probably change your life in 2 weeks to a month. But I promise you that if you will go through this challenge, life will never be the same for you again. Turn off all those distractions, and you may even need to separate yourself some from the people around you. But bring the noise level down. Learn to meditate. And often it helps to just focus on a sound, a humming, or a thought. In fact, maybe the best thing to do is think about the perfect life. What would you do today if you had all of the money that you needed and you had no worries, you had prosperity, everything that you needed was going to be there, and you had nowhere you had to be, nothing you had to do, no one you had to please? What would you do with this day? So while you're meditating, just focus on that. If you can't see it, just pretend. Speak it to yourself, but focus on that. And keep doing that, or hum until, and when thoughts come in, acknowledge them and dismiss them. Don't hang up or stay stuck on them. Don't listen to the voices of doubt and fear and worry and your ego coming in. Just think it and release it and go back to focusing. And keep doing this until eventually the noise level has come down and you can focus on just that thing. And then once you have clarity of exactly what it is you want out of life, then you will find that little inspirations start popping in your head, these little guidances. And if you'll take action on that, if you will listen to that higher knowing that is within instead of without, you will be led across the desert. And there will be a time that it seems like you don't know if you can do this and you're fearful. But keep moving, keep listening and following the direction. You may get an inspiration to just go to the grocery store out of random. So get up and go. I heard a story of a guy who had such an inspiration. He went out and he met somebody that had a poodle with the same name as his father who had passed away. But because his father's name had popped in his head during his meditation, when he found out the name of the poodle was also his father's name, someone who normally would have never talked to, he became friends with. And he was introduced to someone who enabled him to fulfill his dream of his business and become prosperous. So you see, we have to learn to trust this inner guidance, and we have to move in that. And when we do that and we move true to ourselves, not true to other people and their desires, but true to ourselves, we can begin to create that promised land, that beautiful life that we know should be ours. And so take this challenge to heart. There's many techniques, there's many things out there, both good and bad. Many of the Tibetan monks use these prayer beads, and I'll explain in a moment what they're doing. They're not praying per se, although if that makes you feel better, you can call it praying. It's interesting, many of the Tibetan monks and the Hopi Indians are committed to meditating 24/7. All the time, there are monks and people meditating and holding that space for you, so that when you meditate, you come up into that energy and you're invited into peace and prosperity and a awakening to a better way of living. And so you're not alone in this journey. Their presence, their energy is there for you to join at any time. So now back to the story of the prayer beads. We don't want to get caught up in our mind and thinking. We want to learn intuition. We want to learn to follow that. So while we're thinking of the perfect life and thinking of it in every detail, what does it look like? What are the colors? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? Lick the corner of your house. What does it taste like? Involve every sense that you can and continue to clarify every detail of your perfect day and what you would be doing with yourself. And if you'll do it 100 times, you will most likely come to a place where you keep struggling with something and you know it's not quite right. So you learn to release an emotion, or you learn there's a belief that you've picked up. The slave driver's still there condemning you over something. So learn to release that. You can use tapping techniques where whenever you are experiencing a belief that's limiting you and a voice keeps coming to you, sense in your body. Do you have a pain? Do you have a sensation, uneasiness somewhere? And just simply tap on that spot and keep doing it for a while, and you'll notice that it dissipates, and then you can go back to your vision. And this is what the prayer beads for. I believe there's 108 beads here. So without getting into the reasoning, logical mind, you're just thinking, you're envisioning having this thing in every detail and why you want it. You're speaking what it is you want in your mind or out loud. And every time you do this, you move to the next bead and the next bead and the next bead, and you just keep moving down and you keep focused. I mean, if you really want to devote some time and make this happen in a day or a weekend, get you a set of prayer beads and go through until you come all the way back to the beginning. And you would be amazed at the clarity you would have. And once you have that clarity, moving forward becomes so much easier. And the people and the circumstances that you need will show up within your experience, within your space, in your life, that will allow you to get the knowledge or will move you to the place where you can have the things that you desire. So don't take this challenge lightly. I would encourage you to do it. And I would love to hear your stories for anyone who's used the prayer beads for even just one day. What is your life like the next day? Please leave your comments. I want to hear your stories. And if you separate yourself from the news, no matter what, no news media, no media programming. Clear the noise level and find your inner sense. Return to inner sense. We're tired of being adults. It's time to stop being adulterated. It's time to play. It's time to become who we truly are and build and create our imaginary world into our real life experience. And if you would like to learn any more about this process or how to build your own home, how to create, click the link below in the description, sign up for our list, and learn more, because we will be having workshops on these subjects in the coming days. Thank you for your time.